Okay, my name's Kristen. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kristen.
I don't think I've said that either last two steps, but I am an alcoholic. Okay, the Fellowship of the Spirit Conference is dedicated to carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous as set forth in the book Alcoholics Anonymous to both alcoholics and family members of alcoholic families and Al-Anon. The workshop is the one way we hope to share our experience, strength, and hope, focusing on the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Our next workshop will be focused on Step 3. Our panelists will each share for 10 to 15 minutes on Step 3, and then we'll open it up to the floor again for people to share. And I'm just going to read this. We're going to start with John. And he told me to pick something, so this is the best I could do for you, John. It's on page 62. Says, this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, we decided that hereafter in this drama of life, God was going to be our director. He is the principal. We are his agents. He's the father, and we are his children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch which would pass to freedom. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. We had a new employer. Being all-powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. Established on such a footing, we became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully. As we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn, and I think that John must do this step pretty well because he does a lot of service work and is really good at showing up for people in Alcoholics Anonymous. So, you're up, John.
I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
It's good to be here, guys. It's good to finally be here. Help me, God. What a day. It's what I do on self-will. I had to go to work today, and then I had to be at the airport to pick up Bob, and then I had to get up here and figure out rooms. And, of course, with my head, I don't know if any of that's going to work out, right? It's like, well, I don't have enough time to get there from here and here to there. And for some reason, it seems like when AA comes first, it all works out. And I don't know how that is, to tell you the truth, because in my head, that stuff doesn't work out. I screw it up. I screw that stuff up real easy. So, welcome to the newcomers. If there's any newcomers in the room, I don't know if you ever asked, but welcome. This is actually one of the first conferences I've ever came to when I first got sober. It was three years ago up at Snowbird, and it was the first FOTS here, and it really helped me. And I learned a lot of things there, and I saw people living life sober, and I was like, I want what these people have, and I don't know how to do anything, and I don't know how to get it. Because all up till when I got sober, my life was self-will, run riot, obviously. Anyone else could see it looking at my life. The problem is I'm under the delusion that my life is okay, and I'm running it okay, and I'm telling myself lies, and I'm believing that my life is okay, and anyone around me can see that my life is not going okay. My parents could see that, my brothers could see that. When I was forging their checks to drink more, when they kicked me out of their house, when my parents kicked me out of their house, that was just the price I was willing to pay to keep the party going. And I get to this program, and we get into this book. I was taught it was a textbook, and a textbook's to be studied. I didn't think it was the coolest textbook I ever saw. I thought it was really boring. But my sponsor laid it out to me, and he read it to me, and he made it out of his experience, and that's what I've been taught to share is my experience. And when he shared his experience with the book, it made a lot more sense because he was like I was. And, this stuff really came alive for me when he started reading it. And so Step 3, when I was new, I think I did Step 3 when I had 2 months or something. And, I didn't really believe in God. I mean, I thought there was some God or higher power out there, but what Step 3 meant to me then is a lot different than it is now. What it meant to me then is I'm willing to go along with the rest of the steps. Step 3 is just launching me on a course of vigorous action, and I was willing. I mean, my sponsor's way or your guys' way was a lot better than my way, so I was willing to do whatever. step 3 today to me is a lot different. It's like my whole life. Steps 1, 2, and 3, it always comes down to my whole life, my problems. It's just like today I can get into self-will. A great example is it's funny. I've had this girl I've been dating for 3 years, 3.5 years, and every FOTS conference, it seems like we break up. And it's a good reminder that my thinking or way of working things isn't working. It's funny. It's happened like that all the time. And it's like I get back into these relationships, or if it's with work or if it's with school, whatever it is, and I'm like thinking, I'm going to run it. I know how to do it. It might work this time. I did it the same way with alcohol. I'm just going to switch a little bit here and there. Maybe I'll, drink beer instead of the hard stuff. And then with the girl, it's like, maybe we just won't go out to those clubs anymore. Maybe we'll just go to restaurants, or maybe we'll just do this. And I think I can work this stuff. And what happens is it blows up in my face like it always does over and over. And, the good thing is this time I surrendered to that idea that me and her aren't just going to work out. And that's okay. And that's okay, because I'm surrendered to the fact that it's not going to work. So there's a lot of power in surrender. It's like the pain left. It's like it's no longer there. It's like me and her are not going to work. So I gotta just trust in God and do something else. And I can see that through my whole life. Ever since I've been sober and trusting in God and trying to do His will, man, my life has taken care of itself beautifully. It's like when I stop worrying about my life and where it's going to go and what school I'm going to go to or what job I'm going to get next, and focus on AA, go and try and help the guys out at the prison, go to the VOA, do what God wants me to do, all that stuff just fell perfectly in place. And it's amazing. Like, things to me have happened that I never thought would happen. Like, I got a great job today. Guys like me don't get great jobs. Guys like me drop out of school so I can get the tuition money reimbursement and spend it on alcohol. That's what guys like me end up on. Self-will, that's what I do. And then when I focus on, trying to just do this AA thing to the best of my ability, following the sponsor's direction, I get into a great school. I got a bachelor's degree. I got a great job. And, it's just laid out. It's just happening. And it's nothing that I did. I didn't do anything special. I just followed direction. And so this program has done more for me than anything else. And step 3, the biggest thing is willingness. And I pray to God every day for that. And I've had it up till now. I don't want to lose it, though, because I'm sure you guys have seen, like I have seen, is guys get the great job, they get the wife, they get the house, and where's time for AA? AA leaves. AA becomes 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and it's like last time I can't even remember I've been at a meeting. And it's like, I'm gone. So I know this comes first for me today, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to try and help the new guy out there, because I was the new guy here once 3 years ago. So, man, welcome to the newcomers and welcome to the Al-Anon people. And anyway, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, John. I wanted to tell a story about John, but I didn't, so you should thank me, John. The next panel speaker is Bob, who has come a very long way to share his experience, strength, and hope with us. So thanks for coming.
My name is Bob. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Bob.
I'm a member of the Happy Way group in Englewood, Colorado. That's a suburb of Denver. My sobriety date's May 28th of 1973. I belong to a group that does the steps every year. We do that because the book says that a business that takes no regular inventory is sure to fail. So let me talk about my experience with the third step. I've done the third step roughly 38 times. I've also done it in between where there was occasion to do it. And the third step's wrapped around this idea that selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is, well, actually that's second. Let me just talk about the prayer. The prayer says, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy love, thy power, and thy way of life. First time I did a third step was right in front of 6 months about in front of the 1975 International in AA, and I was in Denver. I'd been sober for about a year and a half or 2 years and didn't know much about recovery, and was feeling like I was going to take a drink again. And I was a bad enough drunk where if I had drank again, it would have killed me, because I just barely survived the last run around with it. So I ran into a guy named Don P., and he said that I needed to follow the directions in the book, and that if I did that, I never had to drink again or even want to drink again. So I did that. He told me that when we got to the third step, that first of all, we do it generally between a sponsor and a sponsee, and we do it on our knees and hold hands. And he told me I was going to have to do that. But he wanted me to look at the third step prayer before I did it. And he said, I want you to know what the deal is before I want you to know what kind of a bargain you're setting up here before you do it, so you don't walk into this experience without knowing what you're involved in. So he said, read the prayer to me and tell me what you think it means. And I read the first part, which said, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. And he said, what does that mean to you? And I said, it looks like I'm going to let God do anything with me that he wants, that I'll agree to it. And he said, yeah, that's right. And he said, what's the next part? And I said, relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. And he said, do you understand that the bondage of self is central to alcoholism, in that I am so turned inward, I am so obsessed with myself that I can't see anyone else. And I knew that. I mean, I couldn't see anybody. All I could see was me. And then it says, take away my difficulties. Now, I like that part. That's the best part. But I thought it was about taking away my difficulties so I could feel better. And then the rest of that says that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life, may I do thy will always. So the point of having my difficulties taken away is so other people can see it. And the whole business the whole business is to be an example for other people, so they can see that long time ago I was a burned out, blown away, no future kind of drunk, and that my whole life changed. And that as a consequence of having done these things, I got to live a whole extra life now. Then he said something to me that I thought was meaner than hell. And that was, go home and think about it for a week. Well, you don't want to tell me that. Because if I sit there and think about it, I'll make a tragedy out of it. At the very least, a catastrophe. So I sat there and thought, well, what's God going to do if I give him permission to do whatever he wants? And my mind started working with that. And by the time I came back a week later, he said, well, do you want to do this? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, then I can't help you. And I said, no, you don't understand. I don't want to do it, but I will do it because I don't want to drink again. And he said, why don't you want to do it? And I said, because I don't want to give God that kind of power in my life. And he said, well, if you're going to do it, get on your knees, hold my hands, and say the prayer and mean it. You know, it says we thought well before taking this step, knowing that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. So I got on my knees and I said the prayer, and then I got up, and he started laughing, which I thought was inappropriate. And I said, what's so damn funny? And he said, you don't want to give God that kind of power in your life? And I said, no. And he said, God's got all the power anyway. This is just an exercise in who's God and who's the drunk. All right. So when I did it that time, it just scared the bejesus out of me. I thought, I agreed to this thing, and no telling where God's going to go with this, and He's going to have me on some street corner in Nairobi selling religious tracts, or, you know. And that never happened. None of that ever happened. All the fears that I had about that were totally unfounded. Now let me tell you about today. There are two places in the steps where I virtually put everything on the altar. Where when I go into this step, I am all right with God killing me right on the spot. Where whatever He has in mind is all right, no matter what it is. And that's what we call putting everything on the altar. There's two places where I do that. One's in the third step, in the third step prayer, and the other one's in the seventh step, in the seventh step prayer, where I am willing that God convert me into anything, and that I am more than pleased to go along with whatever He has in mind. So the third step went, a long time ago, from being a really fearful experience about God running around. I thought He had a sharp stick and a bad sense of humor. So I went from this God that would just put you someplace to put you in pain to today, where my experience over all these years is that God's never done anything to me that didn't take me to a better place. So, not that I look forward to it, because it's always a mystery, but I would certainly recommend reaching a point in your program where you're willing to do whatever God has in mind. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, guys. All right. RJ is going to be our Al-Anon speaker, and he actually wanted me to read that third step prayer, so I'm just going to go through it one more time. We were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker, as we understood Him, God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. RJ.
Hi, my name's RJ.
Hi, RJ.
I grew up with alcoholism. I didn't know it was alcoholism, though. It looked like a lot of fun to me. in the suburbs of Chicago where I grew up. My dad was a regular drinker, and things looked pretty good, and it was manageable. We had a summer home in Wisconsin. We used to drive up there on weekends, and my job was to sit behind him and hand beers over the seat to him. And then my mom would start commenting about 3 beers into it that, "Don't you think you've had enough, Carl?" And I remember his mother was also an alcoholic, didn't know it at the time, but I was driving around in Indiana with her and on a hot day, and I got really thirsty. And she had a ball jar in the car, and I thought it was full of water, so I took a big swig of that, and it was vodka. So I didn't really get this whole thing. But I watched the disease progress and learned about alcoholism. My dad went into treatment when I was 14 or 15 years old. And we went to the treatment center, and I got ushered into this Alateen meeting. And I kind of found out what was going on. And that was my one and only time I'd been to an Alateen meeting. My mom started going to Al-Anon, and I watched her transform and become, detached. And then I moved out to Utah, and my dad's drinking got worse. He always claimed that he could drink in moderation, right up until he just died of the disease, And about that time, I was in my 20s in Utah, and I thought, I'm going to go to Al-Anon. And started learning about the disease, and started learning that it wasn't about the alcoholic, it was about me. And I went to a couple meetings, and they said, well, you ought to speak. And so I found myself at this Utah Council, or I forget what it's called, the Utah big Council of Alcoholism Convention at the University of Utah. I think it was 1980. And I'm up in front of 500 people talking about Al-Anon. I had no idea about Al-Anon. So I stopped going to Al-Anon and went on with my life. And I'd been warned about drinking and how it's genetic. And, long story short, I found myself in the other rooms in 1992. And so as far as, I've heard a lot of AAs sum up the 12 steps saying, in 3 phrases, the whole 12 steps: trust God, clean house, help others. And about 8 years into my sobriety, I found that I was my biggest qualifier, and it was suggested I should go to Al-Anon too. And in the Al-Anon literature, it talks about, it's a lot more detailed, which I find to be the case in Al-Anon. They sum up steps 1, 2, and 3 in 3 phases, in 3 phrases. I can't, he can, I'll let him. And that's been useful to me. In my experience with step 3, I've never really had a problem with the concept of a higher power all along. When I got to step 3, working the steps with an Al-Anon sponsor, I'd realized that I hadn't really done step 2 thoroughly. I never really got to the point where I thought that my behavior was insane. And so I kind of had to go back to, and I had to actually experience that part about restoring me to sanity. And all this kind of behavior showed up. At the time, I'd been sober for a while, and my marriage was falling apart. And I didn't really get it. I thought, I'm well. This should work out. Everything should be fine here, And my wife actually asked me to move out of the house, and this was devastating to me. I maintained my sobriety, but in Al-Anon, I found a lot of help in here because I thought, well, I can fix this thing, I can fix this relationship. So I kept trying over a long period of time, which was insane behavior. I had to go back to step 2 before I started to get step 3. And, I was never going to win this one. Trying to convince her, control her, exerting my will. And I realized this insanity was going on. And I got to 3 and I made a decision, well, I am going to turn this thing over. So, I really had to turn the outcome of the relationship over to God. Plenty of days I did. Over a 4-year period, I took my will back plenty of times. I tried everything to fix this relationship. manipulation, control, coercion, bribery. I mean, I just went through a lot of stuff trying to get this thing going. And I thought I got step 3 right away, but it turned out it was super gradual, like way more gradual than I thought it would be. In the end, I gave this stuff up, and I find the 3rd step prayer is really useful, which is why I wanted to read, and I was glad it was talked about earlier. And the sentence in the middle of that prayer really means a lot to me. Relieve me of the bondage of self. When I find I'm in the bondage of self, usually it's causing me a lot of discomfort, my behavior or my thinking, or I'm finding I'm in self-will. So I say that prayer often, and I go back to it, and it's a continuous process. So as far as the step goes, turning my will over on a daily basis, that's an action step. That's something I have to do. There's some days I don't, and the day doesn't turn out very good. Turning my will and my life over to the care of God as we understood Him, I think there's a lot of room there for a lot of interpretations, which is good. My belief is that God wants me to live a contented and useful life. And if I can do that, and sometimes I get that. And over the care of God, I think in my estimation that God can handle anything in my life. I've had experience with that, any situation. And I can find relief just by asking. I get reminded all the time that I can't schedule when that relief's going to come, though. I want it right away sometimes. And I find that I have to go through a process of learning more about the situation, learning about my part of it. And going to Al-Anon meetings helps me focus on my part and, what I need to learn. But that relief always comes. It always comes. And I have to find time for God. I have to find time, as we understood Him. I have to take some time to say that 3rd step prayer and take some time to listen. And what works for me is meditation. I have to sit there and let my mind quiet down, let the thoughts run out, and just listen. And if I can do that twice a day, I'm usually going to have a good night's sleep. A lot of the times it's just once a day. But, I'm grateful that the step has laid out this direction that says I need to turn my will and my life over. And it's a real important part of my program. And thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Thanks, you guys. We have quite a few minutes left, so I hope you're all prepared to talk about step 3. I really like this step, and I love hearing people talk about it because I, like Bob, had a really difficult time with it. When I did it with my first sponsor, she said, "Are you ready to do it? We're going to get on our knees." And I started racing around my apartment, telling her all the reasons I wasn't ready to do it, and she said, "Let's do it anyway." And then I thought I was really in trouble because I had said it and I didn't mean it because I was scared of God. And when I went through that with a sponsor again, I was ready to do that, and it was a really good experience. And for me, that's step 3. Stuff happens in my life, and I call my sponsor and complain. Usually one of the first things my sponsor says is, "I thought you did a step 3. And you said everything, whatever God put in your life today, you'd be okay with." And I really hate hearing that. But, at the end of the day, like when I can really stop and think about it, my experience with that stuff is I have grown into step 3 and what it's all talking about, and it's about practice, and it's a daily thing. And what I know is I'd much rather walk through pain and hard times and stuff like that with a God than even having good times without that God. That's how I feel today. Anyway, it could change tomorrow. So it's the floor. You guys talk.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jason. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Jason. My sponsor once told me, gave me a definition of what it means to have somebody else as a sponsor. that I like. He said that it means that I subordinate my judgment to another human being, which is what I did when I signed up with him some 5-something years ago, and which is why I'm up here, because he told me to come up here. Otherwise, we're about 30 people above my comfort level in this room as far as speaking goes. When I came to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I wanted to stop drinking. I didn't think there was really anything wrong with me other than that I drank too much. And I think the first time that I took step 3, it was really directed toward alcohol. And I didn't want to drink anymore. I like the way, is it Bob put it, I didn't want God to have too much power in my life, but I was willing to let him take control of that alcohol if he'd take it away from me. And it must have worked. It's worked for about 5 years now. Since then, I've had a couple of experiences where I've had no choice, really, but to turn things over to my higher power. This is probably the hardest step there is for me because, to be honest, I don't 100% trust God. He seems to do things that don't make a lot of sense to me and don't make me comfortable. And the first thing that happened, and I forget, I think I was 2 or 3 years sober. My oldest son was in an accident. He hit his head. We took him to the emergency room, and before I knew it, he was on a life flight helicopter flying up to Primary Children's Hospital. He's one of the half dozen, maybe, people in this world whose well-being has any significant effect on me. And there is no feeling of powerlessness greater than sitting in your car and watching the life flight helicopter take off with your son in it. And even somebody with an ego like mine, I can't convince myself that I have any control over that outcome whatsoever. I absolutely gave it up. I didn't have a choice. It just went away. That experience worked out well. He survived. The type of accident that he had was either, as I've been told, nearly always fatal or nearly always 100% recovery. He does have a great huge scar running around his head, and I call him crackhead today. But the fact is, I couldn't convince myself at that point in time that I had any power over that situation whatsoever. And all I could do is trust God that it would work out all right. The second experience, other than after my drinking and my son, was just relatively recently. About 9 months ago, my wife came to me and said she wanted a divorce. And, I know quite a few people in this room, and if they told me that their wives told them that, I probably wouldn't be really surprised. But this was my wife talking to me, and it absolutely floored me. I couldn't believe it. And as RJ was, similar to what RJ was sharing, I yelled, I manipulated, I tried to figure out, how to get the outcome that I wanted out of that situation. And it took about a week before I finally hit the point where I had convinced my ego that there was no controllable outcome that I could force out of this situation. And once again, I had to give that situation over to God. And once I released that, the deal with my son happened so fast that I couldn't really appreciate it. The deal with my wife seemed to go on forever. And when I finally could let that go, the sense of relief that I got out of that was immeasurable. I have a hard time explaining it. That's probably the closest thing I've ever had to a spiritual experience that I can put my finger on. And so you would think after having those experiences, then I would become skilled at this, and I would learn to trust God and to give things to Him on a regular basis and get that sense of relief that comes. But I struggle with this step every single day of my life. I heard a speaker tape once guy down in Texas, and he was having trouble. And the sponsor said, "Well, you just got to invite God into your life." And the guy says, "Well, how do you invite God into your life?" And he says, "Well, you say, God, I invite you into my life." And so every morning when I get in my car, I back out, stop my car, I say out loud, "God, I invite you into my life. Please help me have knowledge of your will for me and the power to carry that out." Every single day. And it doesn't work every day. I don't do it every day. I don't let it go every day, but at least I try to do it every day. And something must be working, because I haven't had a drink in over 5 years, and I could never have done that on my own. So I will continue to subordinate my judgment to another human being, even though he's crazy. If you ever actually meet him, you'll know what I mean. That's all I got. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a grateful member of the Al-Anon family groups. And it's a pleasure to be back here. You know, this third step for me, I look back at several of the things that I worked through with my sponsor, and I get the opportunity to work with those today. One of the things that struck to me early on was, in Al-Anon we talk about the 3 A's. You know, I become aware, I have to sit in acceptance, and then I have to do the action. That's almost like the first 3 steps, isn't it? I become aware that I'm powerless in the first step. I sit with it and find God in the second step. And then I'm ready to take that action in the third step to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. One of the very first words that my sponsor talked to me about, that I get the opportunity to share with others today, is that these steps build upon willingness from step to step. Each step I have to recommit myself to being willing to take that next step. If I'm not willing to take that next step, I might as well just stay right where I'm at. It's important that I recommit to my willingness every time that I've done this. I had a really hard time doing this third step because my claw marks are all over everything in my life. I don't know about you, but I hold on to things, and there I am, being drugged, because I don't know how to let go. My sponsor gave me a bottle of bubbles one Saturday afternoon, sitting out on his deck. And I got to experience what letting go can truly be. So I would suggest this to anybody that's struggling. Bubbles work. Sit for a few minutes. Blow some bubbles. Say to God, this is yours. My sponsor told me that every bubble that I could catch, I could have that problem back. Good luck. I had to have that visualness of what that step really implies to me, and that is that I am truly willing to turn my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Because the more I practice that, the more I do that on a daily basis, the rewards that I see in my life are immeasurable. And I never understood that for the longest time. And there are days that I get up and I have my self-will and will run rampant, and I forget to get on my knees and I forget to say, God, I invite you in. Oh, man, what a day that starts out to be. Sure glad I carry a bottle in my truck. You know, I go out to my truck and I blow bubbles. And people at my office go, oh, there he goes again. You know? When I'm having one of those days, you know, when the stress levels are out the door, that's where I'm at. I'm not blowing bubbles. Because I have to be reminded that I am powerless in my life. I've given that power to something bigger than me. And when I practice that, what I get to have in my life is unbelievable. My sponsor once asked me to describe to him what I thought my life would look like in 3 years after being an Al-Anon. This was 6 months in. I went back and pulled that after 3 years. I was nowhere close. My thinking is too limited. What I've discovered is God's thinking is not. He sees and gives me opportunities that I could never imagine. But I have to be willing. Thanks for letting me share.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm alcoholic. This is tough for me to do. I don't get up and speak much, so I think I've done one talk one time. But my understanding of the third step and my experience of the third step is that I do this step every day. I make that decision, get on my knees and make that decision every morning. And for some reason, and I know what it is my ego and my self-centeredness, I take that back every day. Either out of pride or anger or fear. And most of the time it's out of fear. And I have to do a lot of inventory on that, especially at night when I do my inventory, my 10th step, and look it all over. And that's the only way that I can actually see where I've been selfish or dishonest or frightened or angry, where I can build a resentment. And so that's what I do on a daily basis. That's my experience with it. It does work. For some reason, when I do pray on something, especially an obsession, and I can obsess on things, for some reason or another, God takes those away. And it's not something that I'm doing for myself. It just happens to disappear. And that's the reality that I see in it, is that I would have never thought that I could trust him or anything else. I wouldn't have thought that unless these things keep happening to me. So the more I put my life into his hands, the more he takes things away and allows me to live the life that I'm living today, which is a really good life. So that's my experience with it, and I thank you for letting me share.
Thanks.
Hello, my name's Jana. I'm an alcoholic. And let me tell you how I stay sober. I do whatever my sponsor tells me. And I swear to God, she says, get up there, and I'm up here. And I was thinking I don't have a damn thing to say. But I do love the third step. And my experience with that is that when I first got sober, I've only been sober like 3 seconds, but when I first got sober, I was so grateful because I was so empty. I was so broken. And I remember that first experience with God and doing my first third step. And I was sober and I was great. And I had that pink cloud. And, anybody who dealt with me my first year of sobriety, I apologize. And I was god-awful. And I took my will back about 6 months in. And I didn't drink or drug, but I did everything else that you're not supposed to do in your first year of sobriety. And I let everything in the world be my higher power, but my higher power. And that's why those of you who knew me my first year of sobriety, here's the living amends. And but when I finally got caught in all my lies and dishonesty, I had to really, really turn it over. And I learned what it meant to turn my will and my life over to a power greater than myself. And that power wasn't a man, and it wasn't a credit card, and it wasn't a God that my religion told me. It was something that was just not me. And then when I did that third step for the second time, then I got to see the reality of what the 12 steps offer you. And it offered me humility, and it offered me a way of life that I didn't think I possibly could live. And then so I don't have a lot of apologies for the second year. But today, my experience is I go through this, there are some hard things, in sobriety. And as I have been challenged with financial hardships and marital hardships and hardships with my children, and I take it back and I think I am going to be in charge of this. And, and I don't know why God's will is always so hard for me to take, because every time I do it, it works every single time, but I fight it all the time. And I get really good about letting God have my alcoholism, but I'm not sure he knows what he's doing with my kids. And I get really good about letting him have my marriage. I don't know what he knows to do with my checkbook. I'm not sure he wants it. But, it works in every aspect of my life, every single one. And that's been the struggle, and that's also been where the answer has been. And so I'm so grateful for that step. And I'm got to tell you, do what your sponsor says. I might stay sober tonight until tomorrow morning. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Estenia. I'm an alcoholic. It was funny. My friend and I were just talking about the third step, and she was asking me if I ever did the third step prayer, and I said no, I haven't. 6.5 years. I've refused. But 6.5 years later, I'm also in a bottom of sobriety. And it's an emotional bottom, and it's a hellacious bottom. And it's that complete, it caught up with me. Not letting go and giving my stuff to my higher power caught up with me, because everything else is ego. It really is. And, I had distraction of school, and I had distraction of all these things until May, and school ended. And then I lost my job 2 weeks ago, and I have literally nothing but AA in my life right now. And the great thing about a bottom is it gives you the opportunity to really redevelop your program the way I'm doing it, the way I did when I was new, only even more hardcore, because now I have a lot more wisdom in sobriety. I'm not as convoluted and silly as I was when I was in my first year, because I'd lived all these years under the influence of chemicals, and now I've lived all these years conscious, just under the influence of my ego. And this is the first time I've actually really kind of defined a higher power. And because I have a tendency, my higher power becomes people, especially men. Every man becomes a higher power, and and every time I get screwed. So I'm trying not to cuss. It's really hard. But thank God for the third step, because now that I've just done my second step, for the first time for real, for the third time in trial, it's going to be a lot easier. And it's interesting how the more broken we are, the more willing we are to let things go. So thank you.
I'm Edna, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. Hi. Isn't it glorious to have children's voices here? I love it. Anyway, I had been in AA a little bit over a year when I got the sponsor. I have been going through it now for the last 3 years. And until then, I had read the book, like many of us do, but I hadn't really done a lot. And so I had read the third step, and the third step, and I thought I did it really well because I always prayed. I always pray, so I just thought I'd continue doing what I always do. And one day I was downtown shopping before Christmas, and I had gone to Modern Display because I love to just walk around in there I was feeling kind of down, not knowing exactly why. So I wandered around in there just looking at things, and all of a sudden I felt a black curtain almost surround me. I was just cloaked in a cloud, just like those mountains up there that you look up and you can't see through them. And I didn't know what to do, and I thought, I'm not going to make it out of here. What is going on? And they had a bench kind of on, you walked up a few steps, and then there was a bench, and then you went over to another section. I think things are different now, but anyway, I walked up that section thinking it would get me to the door faster, and there was this bench there, and I sat on it. And I was just so nervous and worried and afraid, and I just prayed and prayed my heart out, and actually turned over everything to God, saying, I can't handle anything yet like this. I don't know what it is. I'm just so afraid. And I didn't really know any specifics to tell him at the time. And when I took some deep breaths and opened my eyes, it was a beautiful day, and all the cloudiness was gone. And I don't know why that happened to me, but it keeps reminding me that when I'm really mad at him, like I have been this last year because of some things that have happened, I remember back to that time, and I don't have a doubt that somehow he'll give me this power and the spirit and the faith to keep going. A lot of illnesses in our family and things, and I've been fortunate that my children, well, maybe not, but I've been fortunate that my children were all raised and grown and had children of their own and were okay before I became sober, except my daughter. And I have had the privilege of having 3 grandchildren in sobriety, and that is a joy because I know every one of them and they know me, and we have a blast. So since I'm running out of time, I thought I'd quickly read this third step prayer because I just love it. God, I offer myself to Thee to build with me and do as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and the way of life. May I do Thy will always. Amen. Thank you.
My name's Jackie, and I'm an alcoholic. Luckily, I lost my glasses a couple weeks ago, so I can't see your faces. No intimidation. One of the reasons that I wasn't going to come to Alcoholics Anonymous to begin with was because I knew they were going to try and change my concept of God, which is all I knew my God as was God. Now I know He's my higher power, and I realize that He's the higher power of my understanding. And so I can still have the same higher power that I've always had, only with better understanding. And so when I got to the third step, turn my life and my will over to a higher power of my own understanding, I really thought I was there already, but because I'd always had this higher power, but I really had always, in times past, particularly before I became an active alcoholic, I always thought I had turned my life over to Him. But I realized I really hadn't, because I kept things like my alcohol and my whatever other little things I'm not going to tell you about, and didn't surrender those things. And so when my sponsor led me through the third step prayer, it was amazing to me. And I said it every morning and every night for like a month until it really, I think, sunk in what I was really doing. You know, you can say the words over and over, but until you really understand them and really mean them, which doesn't necessarily happen the first time, at least for me, until I really understood them and meant them, it was just another prayer. So, and just another comment. I've never really been one for canned prayers, but I love Alcoholics Anonymous's prayers. So, thank you.
Okay, I just want to thank our panel speakers again, RJ, Bob, and John, for leading us with their experience, strength, and hope, and your participation. I just want to announce again, as a reminder, that there's going to be an 11 o'clock p.m. meeting in the hospitality room tonight if you need a meeting. And then also just again, when they're asking for volunteers out there on the registration desk, if you're Al-Anon, please sign up and put that you're Al-Anon. And then same with alcoholics too. By group conscious, the Fellowship of the Spirit Conference does not close each meeting with the Lord's Prayer. Instead, we encourage that this whole conference be treated with an attitude of continuous prayer. And we will then say the Lord's Prayer together at the close of this conference on Sunday. Thanks. Well done.